What's going on? It's your boy DameSmiff, and this evening I'm gonna have a quick conversation with you guys about being young and dumb. And so, if you are interested in conversations like this, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you can see more content like this. So, what do I mean by young and dumb, and what does it have to do with musicians and artists? Well, essentially, what I mean by that is that having this kind of like inexperience in maybe your instrument or maybe your career or just, life in general, you're just young, it will lead you to the not as beneficial options when it comes to your career. And that's fine for most people if you have the ability to withstand, let's say, making some mistakes and things like that. So I just kind of wanted to give my opinion on what that means when I hear young and dumb and kind of the things that I went through when I was young and dumb. And so to break down how it really fits for a musician, you kind of have to understand what's expected of a musician. And so generally in society, we expect musicians and artists of all kinds to reflect reality. That's what we expect of you. And what that means in a nutshell is that you're supposed to kind of like, if, right now everybody's dancing on this beat to make music of us dancing on this beat so we can, continue to dance on that beat. Now, there are some times where artists try to like, make a change in society or like really, really pioneer a new sound or a new genre or a new look or a new style of film or things like that. That's cool, but it's not as common. Like with the number of people who call themselves artists and actually commit to the act of creating art, it's not enough people to make that matter in this conversation. So now, when we're thinking of being young and dumb and then trying to reflect reality, this is where the conversation around art can get kind of cloudy. And I'm only saying that because I really paid attention to this in my own perspective when I was going through school for music and things like that. And I tried to really relate to other artists, and I realized I couldn't simply because of things like maybe their experiences, um, their perspective on maybe life. And usually it would fall in between the experiences we've had as well as the outcomes of the music industry that we'd want. And so to give you an example, you can have a conversation with an artist as a young, teenager or 20 something year old, right? And you guys can wind up having the conversation about career or like, goals and future and things like that. Very quickly will you realize that you may not align, like you may not be on the same path, you may not want the same things, which is not a bad thing, but it's something you need to figure out. And when you do figure it out, this is where you get the choice to be young and dumb or to apply a little bit of wisdom here. And this is one of the situations where you're going to have truly a career changing moment where like you're going to have to figure out who to network. This is one of those examples. Another example could be like where to live, where to perform, and like how to basically showcase and market the skills you have. Because let's say you're a vocalist or a singer, it may not be the best right now at this moment or this month to be trying to gig at live venues or something, depending on your situation, it may be better or just, make more money for you to be in the studio creating music or helping others create their music. But if you're not really sure about that decision, you're going to fall back on the, network that you have. That's why it's important to know who to network with. So like your friends could tell you, "Oh man, you're doing a whole bunch of shows in the city. Your band's killing it and you're a great singer." But they're not streaming your songs. They're not, visiting your shows or anything like that. They just see the pictures on Instagram and they're hitting the like button, but it's not really translating into, let's say, great analytics that you could use for your business, meaning ticket sales, record sales, even follows on your social media profile. If it's not really getting you some kind of like traction, usually it's not going to really directly benefit you. It's going to be something that, is usually a word of mouth or a feeling that you're going for. And so when you're young and dumb, the choice between getting something like tangible data and analytics and making sure people like you can feel like an easy choice to make, but it's actually very difficult because most people don't really know why they enjoy the music or media that they enjoy. They usually were told or have grown up to be told the things that they enjoy. And that's just the true hard cold facts. Like if you're a, let's say, a black man born in the 70s on the east coast of the United States, we can generalize what kinds of music you may have grown up listening to and what influenced you into what you enjoy today, or maybe just what's in your playlist. And so, simple little things like that, we don't really pay attention to until it's after the fact, unless you see very rarely a very wise young artist that's aware and very intentional about their choices, which usually comes from the supervision or mentoring of somebody older than them. This is kind of the goal of this video, so that if you're a younger artist, you can kind of grasp what it means to be young and dumb. And so I'll give you another example of what I mean when I hear people say young and dumb when it relates to artists, um, their personal or their relationships and things like that, how this will affect their musical musical career. Sometimes you'll see people getting into the flow of their career, and let's say they actually start making money, and this doesn't really fit only for musicians. This can fit in a lot of different industries, especially if you're just, a person that's the breadwinner of your family. But people will tend to make more money, and then lifestyle creep will kick in, and then they'll begin to buy lavish things or buy extra things, cooler clothes, maybe a newer instrument, weirder things that just don't necessarily make sense for getting tangible, beneficial results for your business, but they feel like investments. It feels like taking this girl out on a date, but she's a singer and you guys are talking about music, feels like it's a write-off. Or maybe buying that or renting that new car for that music video feels like a write-off, but you only really made like, $3,000 off the music video this year. It starts to not really make sense what direction you're trying to go based on the actions you're taking. So this is why what relationships you have in your personal life will make a lot more sense when you have them set up outside of trying to make, some kind of business decision. If you can figure out, all right, I'm going to be an artist that looks like I'm going to have X number of kids, I'm going to live in this place, and I'm going to spend this much money, and I'm going to wear these kind of clothes and drive this car. And the more specific you get, you can kind of reverse engineer the way you want your career to go, or the way you want your foundation to be for when you do actually commit to your career. And so I'll give you an example of how to, create a solution for that. For some people, they'll get into their music career, well into their, I guess you could say, scholastic career when you're in school, middle school, college, and things like that. And then by the time you get out of school, it's already going. And then they start thinking about, let's say, a family or having kids and, the future and how they're going to make all this money and what they're going to do with it. This is the point of you being young and wise and not young and dumb. Because if you realize that the success of being in, let's say, a stable relationship or a stable situation makes more sense. If you know that as a younger artist or a newer artist, then that would be the decision you will lean towards because you would prefer the benefits of that. Now, if for some reason you see value in the instability of a lot of artists today, where you have artists that have, you know, multiple families, maybe divorces, or a lot of like label problems or money problems and things like that, you might find some kind of like value in maybe the notoriety they get from that. But I don't know. You let me know. If this was interesting to you, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe, and I will make more videos like this. I will see you guys tomorrow evening for another episode of A Late Night at Dames. But I'm out, y'all. Peace.